G'day guys, in today's episode of Ask Steve, I'm going to answer the question, is it feasible to do the big lap with a 1-year-old? G'day guys, thanks for joining me again for another episode of Ask Steve. This is the third one in the series, and based on the great feedback and the amount of questions coming through, I'm feeling very encouraged. I think we're onto a bit of a winner of a format here, so we're going to definitely keep going with this. If you've got a question for me about doing the big lap or any other sort of Aussie road trip related question, email it to me at asksteve@thebiglap.tv and I'll get to it as quick as I can. Working on ways to make more videos, make more and faster videos so that I can get through as many questions as I possibly can. So keep them coming, asksteve@thebiglap.tv. Today we're going to talk about traveling with young kids, and this question comes from Paul Middleton. And he says, "Hi mate, love your videos. I've done the big lap a few times solo, but I'm now living in Germany with a Portuguese girl with a baby due in 3 months. We're planning to go back to Australia and do a big lap for 12 to 18 months when our little girl is 1 year old. Is it feasible to do a big lap with a 1-year-old? Well, Paul, absolutely it's feasible, and I would encourage you to do it. I wrote an article, this one here, every young family should do the big lap. And I wrote that over a year ago, and it's one of the most popular posts on our website. I'll put a link to it down below if you want to go and read it. These days, everybody's busy doing something. You know, we never seem to have enough time. Kids come along, and mum and dad are working. Kids go off to childcare, and then suddenly they're in primary school, and then they're in high school, and then they're gone. You have this sort of window of opportunity to really spend quality time with your kids. So when they're younger, certainly before they start school, it's the best opportunity to actually get out there and have an adventure with them and really connect with them. And this is what we did. Our daughters were 4 and 1. Sarah was about 21 months old when we started our trip. And when you wake up and you spend every day with your kids for day after day, week after week, month after month, you really connect with them. And those bonds that we made when they were younger have just carried through.
What's in here, Daddy?
That's our dinner there. Hold up, see? It's pasta vegetariano. Sounds pretty bland and boring, doesn't it? Finding opportunities to really connect with your kids, at that level is something that I would absolutely encourage. And doing a trip like the Big Lap is a perfect way to do that. Sure, there's some challenges. Sure, there's some risks. But I think those risks are fairly minimal, and I think they're fairly easily mitigated if you just take a few precautions. When you've got kids at home, you've got things to deal with, like feeding them and sleeping and keeping them safe and changing nappies and that sort of stuff. When you take them on the road, you've still got all that stuff to deal with. It's just somewhere else.
Could have been worse places to get stuck. At least we've got water that we can use we can boil for dishes and wash in and Ready? So tight.
So in this video, I'll run through some of the practical aspects of traveling with young kids, but just keep in mind that as they get older, it doesn't necessarily get any easier. Sure, they'll become a little bit more independent, and you don't have to worry about nappies and things like that. But then you've got homeschooling to deal with. You've got the fact that the kids are going to want to do different things to what you want to do, and so it's not that it gets harder. It's just different challenges. So whatever age your kids are, I would absolutely say get out there and plan a big lap. Don't be discouraged by the fact that your kids are younger or think, oh, we've got to wait for them to get older. Just go. Spend the time with them, and preschool is a great time to go. So one of the things that Jen and I talked about before we did our big lap was how do we make the transition from home life to traveling life as smooth and seamless as possible. And one way we did that was to start talking about our big trip, as we called it, probably about a year before we even left. And we had a map like that one behind me up on the wall at home, and we would say, oh, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. And when we'd see something on TV that was someplace in Australia that we're going to go, we'd say, oh, we're going to be there next year. So there was a build up. Now I know for a 1-year-old this is probably not relevant, but if you've got kids that are a little bit older, a little bit more aware of what's going on, that actually starts to make a difference, so that the anticipation is building for them as well. One of the bright ideas that Jen had was to take with us the girls' doonas and their pillows and some of their soft toys and their sheets, so that we could basically replicate to some extent their bedroom from home into our camper trailer, and that made it easier for them to sort of transition from the home life to the travelling life.
Out pop Cyril. Pop! Out pop Tallulah.
Now that worked out really well. So when we started the trip, Sarah was still sleeping in a cot at home, and we took our porta cot with us, which we could fold up and put up on the roof rack when we were driving. And at night time we just set it up in a camper trailer, and she slept in that. And we used that for the first few months of the trip before she basically outgrew it. And at the point where she was sort of waking up in the night and able to climb over the side, we knew that having a porta cot was fairly redundant. And we sent it home and got her a stretcher, and she slept on that. Then after that, she'd wake up during the night and climb up onto the bed on top of the camper trailer with us. And, I don't know why, but she would get up in between us, and then she would turn sideways, and then she'd be pushing me one side and Jen the other side, and we were like this letter H in the bed. I don't know. We still tease her about it today. It's just one of the things she used to do. But all part of the fun of having kids. And we were actually worried for a little while there that we'd never get her to sleep in her own bed when we got home. But it wasn't an issue. After a couple of weeks after we got home, she was fine, and things sort of got back to normal. Keeping your kids contained and safe is something that obviously you're going to be conscious of. At home, you've got boundaries. You put up gates on stairways and things like that, and you basically have to have the same mindset when you're traveling, doing your big lap. A little playpen, like a fold-up playpen with some gates. It's probably a good idea that you can set up outside under your awning, so that they can play outside, and you can have a reasonable sense that they're not going to wander off anywhere. I think actually one of the most dangerous parts of having kids on a trip like this is in caravan parks. Not so much when you're out in the bush. Sure, there's dangers there as well, but in caravan parks, the thing you've got to be most wary of is cars. Cars zoom around caravan parks. They're supposed to be doing walking pace, but that doesn't always work out like that. You see a lot of idiots charging around that are not thinking that a kid might walk out in front of a car, and So I think the most dangerous thing about traveling with kids is actually cars in caravan parks. So just be conscious of that. When you get away from camp and go on hikes and things like that, you're going to want to take your 1-year-old with you, of course, and they're not going to be able to walk all the way that you do, and you'll end up carrying them a fair bit unless you have a backpack. Now you can get backpacks that you can put little toddlers in and carry them around.
Sarah having a lovely ride on the back there.
We had one for the first part of our trip, and it was great. Sarah sort of outgrew it fairly early on the trip, so we left that behind along the way. And then on the odd occasion when we'd go on a longer hike and she couldn't walk, I ended up carrying her, or Jen ended up carrying her.
Well, I'm doing some walking.
I know. Walking?
You walking too?
Yeah.
Do you tall all of a sudden, aren't you, hey?
Take her, Daddy. To what?
This is one of the challenges of travelling with a 2-year-old. Sarah can't cope with a longer walk, so Jen and I have to take turns to carry her. And we even at one stage had an ocky strap. I'd put an ocky strap from this shoulder pad to this shoulder pad on my day pack, and she was sitting on that. We came up with some different ideas about how to carry what was then basically a 2-year-old for long distances, and it worked out fine. But if you can get yourself one of those backpacks that you can put a toddler in, and obviously you'll have a stroller as well for when you're not hiking mountains and things like that. Those are the things you're going to need to basically, from a practical point of view, to be able to go out and sort of see the places you want to go to. Now, big driving days can be one of the more challenging aspects of travelling with young kids. They don't like to sit in the car all day, every day. So you need to sort of change your perspective on how far you're going to travel in a day. I know it's easy for a couple of adults to jump in the car and just, punch out 1,000 kilometres in a day without it being any massive big deal. But you really don't want to be doing that with your kids in the back seat. I would put an arbitrary limit of about 500 kilometres in any one day travelling with young kids, and less is better. The reality is it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. The first tip I'd give you is to plan the night before. Think about where you're going to travel and have everything ready to go. So what clothes are they going to need? Do you need to get some nappies out, prepare their food? Have all that sort of easy to reach throughout the day, so you're not having to go and unpack anything or dig deep into the depths of your camper trailer to find something because you didn't think about it. Are you going to stop for a swim somewhere along the way? So you're going to need the bathers, you're going to need a towel, stuff like that. So sort of the night before you're planning a big day, sit down and actually think it through. Where are we going to go? What's going to happen along the way? Now, when you're doing your preparations the night before, plan your stops for the day. Get the map out and think, okay, we're going from here to here. Where are we going to stop along the way? And you're going to need more stops than you would probably need if it was no kids in the back. at least every hour or maybe every hour and a half at the most, you want to stop and plan to spend 15 or 20 minutes to sort of, help them to have a run around, burn off a bit of energy, and then they'll be ready for another stretch.
Come on. So we shake all the car lethargy out of them. Getting ready for another stint. There we go. All right. Good for another 100 k's now, I reckon.
Now the end result of that is you're going to end up spending longer to get where you want to go. Don't think you're going to average 100 kilometres an hour throughout the day. It just won't happen. 50 kilometres an hour would be a pretty good average. So if your goal is to get 500 kilometres in the day, then you really want to get up and get cracking early and spread it out throughout the day. You might need to plan a fairly long lunch break if it's going to be the heat of the day, somewhere it's going to be nice, some shade, maybe I can have a swim. So you really want to map out. So basically time invested the night before in planning the next day will certainly make that day a lot easier for you. If you just think, we'll just get up and chuck everything and go, well then you're going to get nagging kids in the back seat. You're going to end up going into roadhouses and spending too much money on junk food, and the day will get away from you. And then, like inevitably happens, you'll end up arriving late in the dark, setting up camp in the dark. And look, I'm not saying we got it right every time. We learnt the hard way many times. It's also worth thinking about having a plan B. If we don't make it to our destination tomorrow for whatever reason, we get a flat tire, or something happens along the way that causes a delay, where else can we stop along the way? So our goal is to get from here to here, but if we don't get there, we'll stop here instead. You need to be a little bit flexible, and when you're just traveling as adults, that you can sort of stop anywhere. There's lots more options. But when you're traveling with kids, you might have a few more factors to deal with, and so just factor that in. Just sit down the night before and think about, okay, what are we going to do tomorrow? Where are we going to go? And where are the possible stops that we might make along the way if it just gets all too hard and we need to sort of rein it in and shorten the day. Now we would pack our kids a snack box, which was basically some some sultanas and some carrot sticks and a nut bar or things like that into the snack box, and that would go with them in the back of the car for the day, and they could graze on that throughout the day, and it was mostly healthy stuff, so it's not like they're sitting there eating junk food all day. And what that would do is it would just take the edge of it. If kids get hungry, they get upset and they get miserable, and they'll soon let you know about it. So just giving them that sort of little grazing snack box was a great way to sort of make it easier for them to spend hours and hours in the back seat. Put together an activity bag for them, which is where they can keep their colouring in books and their reading books and their toys, whatever else that they would have in the back seat. It'll also help you to keep the back seat more organised. It's very easy for it to suddenly become, like a bomb went off and kids' toys went everywhere. So having their own activity bag that always is like a car bag that lives in the car all the time. It's got their stuff in it, and just get them in the habit of, when we arrive at our destination, put all your stuff back in your bag, and that can live in the back seat or take them with them into the camper trailer or the caravan. That's a great idea as well.
You're going to have a look at Sarah, because every time she does her snapping, which is her cutting, she does this, she goes... It's very funny. I cannot not laugh when I see her do it, because it's so funny. And she doesn't know that she's doing it, of course, but it's almost as funny as when Steve used to feed Sarah and he'd go... I used to laugh at that too.
Some of the dangers that kids might face around camp that you need to be conscious of are things like campfires. Keeping them away from the fire. Now they're pretty perceptive. They can feel the heat. They're not going to go running into a fire. But one simple thing we did with Sarah was sometimes we would just get a stick and draw a line around a fire and tell her you can't step over that line. And we made a game out of it. And she she was less than 2 years old at the time, but she got it. And it was a simple thing to do.
Cooking. Can I go cook?
No, you can't go cook.
Now, snakes are another thing that you need to be conscious of. Australia has 7 of the 10 deadliest snakes in the world, and so most snakes that you come across, they're likely to be venomous, and you just assume that they all are if you don't know otherwise. But don't be terrified of them. The reality is we probably saw half a dozen snakes on our big lap, and one of them, right up close in a toilet block in Karajini National Park.
So Savannah, what did we see last night?
It was a king brown snake in the toilet.
It slithered away, didn't it?
Yeah, into the bushes.
Yeah. So you don't want to touch those snakes. What do you do when you see a snake?
This step quietly away.
Yeah.
But that's no reason not to go. What you need to do is basically train your kids to be snake aware, not terrified, but just aware. You know, where are you going to run into a snake? You know, at the time when Savannah and I saw the king brown snake in the toilet, we knew that there was a lot of snakes around Karajini. King browns are pretty popular around there, and so at night time when you're walking around, we always have a torch pointed at the ground, and we're walking slowly and deliberately. You're not sort of, you know, bashing through the bush, and you're walking along a track. You're looking down all the time, and you're talking to your kids about, oh, now we just need to keep an eye out for snakes. Now, when Savannah and I saw the snake in the toilet block in Karajini, we were literally walking up to the toilet block. It was pitch black except for our torches, and I said, now when we go in, we'll just open the door first and make sure there's no snakes in there. And literally push the door open, shine down, and there's this huge, probably 6 foot long king browns just sitting on the floor. Now, you might think that our reaction would have been, oh my God, it's a snake. But you know, when you're living in the environment, you're sort of more attuned into the environment. So we just took a step back. I kept the door open so we could see it, and we just watched it. It didn't really care about the fact that we were there. Now the danger was that you just went barreling in and trod on it, and then it swung around and bit you. But if you see it first, you've got plenty of time to get out of the way and let it get out of your way. So we just basically stood back and just let it go let it go on its way. It just slithered around for a while. Then it went out under the wall on the other side. The toilet block was like a galvanized shed that had a gap under it about that big. And it just went out the other way, and we just gave it a minute to sort of get far enough away, and then we went to the toilet. There was no other toilet block around, so we had to use it. Now, on the way back to our camp, which was maybe 150 metres away, we had the torches, pinned to the ground, making sure that we didn't tread on it. We hadn't crossed over the track on the way back, and we were fine. It was a great opportunity for Savannah to experience a snake close up in the wild, but not be terrified of it. So the trick is just to be careful. Talk to your kids about the fact that snakes are, behind a log or in the bushes or in the long grass, and that these places are to be avoided, and to encourage them to just keep looking for them all the time. And but don't be terrified of them. The chances of being bitten is very, very low. With all the people, hundreds of thousands of people out there traveling all the time, very few actually ever get a close encounter with the snake, and hardly any ever get bitten. So it's really not that scary. You just need to be conscious of it and take precautions, and make sure your kids clearly understand that they are dangerous, and you don't want to go touching them. You certainly don't want to tread on them. But if you see them first, you really have nothing to worry about. Crocodiles are another thing that you need to be conscious of, especially when you've got young kids. Now, we've got two types of crocodiles in Australia. We've got the saltwater and the freshwater. Saltwater crocodiles live in saltwater and freshwater, so you don't assume just because they're a saltwater crocodile that you're only going to find them in saltwater. Basically, they can be anything up to a couple of 100 kilometres inland, up rivers and estuaries and things like that. So anywhere pretty much in the top 1/3 of the continent, unless you know 100% with certainty that there's no crocodile in a piece of water, you just assume that there is. Crocodiles are opportunists. They'll sit there quietly under the water. You won't even know they're there. They could be literally just below the surface, and you won't even know they're there. And they wait for for a meal to walk up. So if you've got a dog or a small child or anybody just basically wandering around too close to the edge, unfortunately that's when the danger is at its most. So the golden rule is you just stay away from the water's edge, and you just assume that there could be a crocodile there unless you know that there isn't. And you'll only know that there isn't because you can see every square inch of that piece of water. So Paul, I hope I haven't scared you off. There are dangers, of course, but these things are manageable and controllable. And there's dangers at home, there's dangers everywhere. There's part of having kids is managing that danger. And from my point of view, it really isn't dramatically different whether you're at home or whether you're traveling, and it's something that you can actually control. But the experience you'll have with them when they're young and impressionable, and the time you'll get to spend that quality family time, far outweighs any potential pitfalls or dangers that you might encounter along the way. Just go out there and go for it, and you'll have a fantastic experience. There's more information in my book, The Big Lapper's Guidebook, which you can download from our website, where I talk a lot more about the details of traveling with kids, and the dangers and the things to look out for and stuff like that. I think we've covered a general overview here, but just no matter what, it is the right thing to do. Travel with your young kids. They're never too young. Just go out there and go for it, and you will have a fantastic experience. Thanks for joining me in this video. If you've got a question for me, email it to asksteve@thebiglap.tv, and I look forward to answering your question in a video like this one soon.